Hello, I'm John Dickerson. At any moment, or in a few moments, the United States will hope to land a spacecraft on the moon. The last time an American spacecraft touched down on our lunar neighbor was in 1972 with the Apollo 17 mission. Today's spacecraft is operated by a private company called Intuitive Machines. If successful, it would become the first private company to achieve a landing on the moon's surface. CBS News space analyst Bill Harwood joins us now. Bill, thanks for being with us. And you can, interrupt me any moment something exciting happens. But explain to our audience exactly what's happening right now.
Well, if all's going well, John, they're about 3 minutes above the surface of the moon. That's how long it's going to take to get down to the surface if everything works right. There's been a little bit of an unusual development early on in this. They kept the spacecraft in orbit, an extra trip around the moon. They had some landing sensors that were not working properly. They have switched over to some backup sensors that were on board. These are NASA sensors that were pretty much on board as an experiment. Those sensors are now prime, helping with the navigation down to a safe landing site. All of that seems to be going well, and we should listen to the commentators. We're 2 minutes from touchdown. They're giving us a blow-by-blow of the descent.
All right, let's listen in then.
Standing by to see if we can get an altitude reading from FIDO here. That's Flight Dynamics Officer Sean Stewart on Blue Team.
So, Bill, while we're in this little pause here.
Confirm that looked like a pitch over gimbal. Let's do it.
Feel free to tell us what.
Sounds like we have some data that confirms pitch over. This starts the HDA process. That's hazard detection avoidance. Throughout this show, you've heard Gary and I talking about the problem that was attempted to be solved in lunar orbit, making the decision to not only postpone this show.
NDL indicates altitude of 1,000 meters.
1,000 meters call out from NDL. That is coming from flight management. This is a system right now. NDL was not intended to be the primary landing system on this. Instead, we're using 2 laser beams from NDL and feeding that into that hazard detection and avoidance system that you see on your screen right now, with the lander making autonomous decisions about where it wants to land. That is generally
less than 1 minute remaining to touchdown.
Less than 1 minute remaining for touchdown.
And again, that's the time of touchdown. It may take some time to actually confirm the status of the lander.
And in this process, we do have a deployment of Eagle Cam attempting to take the third-person images of Nova C going down to the lunar surface. We are inside of 1 minute, Gary.
John, it all sounds like it's going well at this point. Of course, this is the most critical phase of the landing, getting down very close to the surface. If this all works well, it's going to touch down at a speed of about 2 miles per hour. That's, I'm told, is walking pace for senior citizens. So a fairly gentle touchdown if it all works.
And it said it was making
we're tracking here in the broadcast
autonomous decisions about where to land. So it's making sure through its own, I guess, echolocation, a version of it anyway, to make sure that it doesn't land on the edge of a crater or something.
And we are in standby mode, as you heard it from the mission director, Dr. Tim Crane.
They should be down by now. They're standing by for telemetry to confirm that, John. We're just going to have to hang on for a few moments and see what comes out of this. But they should be down on the surface by now.
All right, well, we'll wait for that news from them. Explain in the interregnum the significance of this, what this will mean for the future of space exploration or private space exploration if they pull this off.
And 1 minute has elapsed.
Well, you know, NASA's trying to send astronauts back to the moon in their Artemis program. I'm sorry, I'm trying to listen to them at the same time, John. We're in a critical phase right now.
Stations locked on to Nova C.
They're trying to see if they can lock on to telemetry from the spacecraft to confirm a safe touchdown.
That carrier lock call, Gary, we expect that to come from GroundNet or COM. That conversation possibly not happening on our public channel that we have access to. We're just standing by to hear that come through the channels as we approach almost 2 minutes since we estimated the landing time. We did get a few call-outs on the side, folks coming into the room saying there was about a 2-minute forgiveness in our timetables.
We are checking our antenna reception.
Checking antenna reception.
And they said that originally they expected a delay of between 15 seconds and 2 or 3 minutes before they could lock onto a signal to confirm the landing. I will say everything we heard leading up to touchdown, or the presumed touchdown, was proceeding normally. And John, you asked me, what's the value of these missions? NASA wants to send astronauts back to the moon with its Artemis program. And what they've decided to do is hire private companies, encourage private companies to build spacecraft that can carry the agency's payloads.
These
are unpiloted spacecraft that can carry science instruments and other technology to the moon at a lower cost, while NASA focuses on the astronaut part of that mission.
The flexibility between what we were tracking, what we were given was just about 524.
All stations, this is MD. Please look back through your logs and confirm the last information you had, and we'll determine this is a comm outage.
All right, so
and that's the mission director, Gary. These are our notes here of what we believed. We talked about the comm outages
So
with the lander making autonomous decisions.
They simply
this
have
is the
a communications
of
outage with the
last
lander
bit of
that they
data
can
that came
correct,
into Nova Control,
or if there's some other issue they've got to deal with. We just don't know
this
yet.
is the last bit of data. Where was the lander possibly going? How do
not
we
too
look
different
for
than
it
down
and
here on
establish
Earth,
those
where AT&T was down for most of the day. So we're having communications difficulties on both Earth and its nearest satellite. Was there anything particular, Bill, in this vehicle that was particularly innovative for this mission?
Oh, yeah. Quite a few things, John. One is the main engine uses liquid methane and oxygen. It's the first time that combination has been used on a deep space spacecraft. It's thought to be more efficient. It's easier to handle on Earth. And you might think of it as the wave of the future in these things. And that engine has really worked flawlessly, as far as we know, all the way through down to touchdown. Still standing by for communications. There are also 6 experiments on board from NASA that are testing some new technology, and some of it's pretty interesting stuff. And along with that, there's 6 commercial payloads, everything from a sensor technology to small moon globes by the sculptor Jeff Koons. So it's really a smorgasbord of payloads here. The idea is to kind of open up a private sector pathway to the moon that will lower the cost of space transportation.
And Bill, communications issues are one challenge, but how hard is it? So it's been 50 years since the last American landing on the moon. How much better have they gotten, or is it possible to get better? In other words, is it always very complicated to land on the moon, no matter how good your technology is?
It really is. We joke in the space reporting world, when there's a problem, someone will say, well, space is hard, because that's what the engineers always say. But the simple fact is, space is hard. It's an incredibly unforgiving environment. Enormous energies are required to get you there. You have all kind of technical problems. Now, one big advantage over the Apollo program is there's much more high-power computer technology available today, faster communications links, things like that, which improve and make these things more efficient. But it doesn't get away from the fact that just getting there is extremely difficult. There have been 3 attempts by private companies to put landers on the moon before today. All 3 of them failed. So if this one succeeds, it would be the first in terms of a privately funded vehicle to reach the surface of the moon. So that's at least some metric for thinking about how tough it is to get there.
And I thought I overheard, and maybe I'm splicing together 2 things, that there may be some concern that the communications is interrupted by that autonomous last portion before touchdown. In other words, this might be a known issue, that once it goes into autonomous mode, perhaps that has some relationship with comms. I may have misheard that, but I guess what I'm trying to do is figure out whether in that room their concern is we just can't be in contact, or whether as the minutes tick by, it suggests more and more that perhaps something more than just a communications breakdown has happened.
It's hard to know. A communications problem could be a routine glitch that they can resolve after they take more time to look at the telemetry. Could be something more serious. We just don't know yet. I do think, as you mentioned, as the minutes tick by, certainly concern goes up a little bit. But one of our problems on the outside looking in is we don't have access to that data, so it's really impossible to speculate on what might be going on. They certainly expected to hear from the lander by now, and they haven't. It could be a simple problem. It could be more serious. We just don't know yet.
And Bill, how big of a vehicle is this we're talking about here that was making this voyage today?
It stands about 14 feet high. It has a splayed out landing leg, so it kind of comes down on multiple legs. Big main engine. Sorry, I'm just listening in one ear here while I talk to you. So it, if you think about it, if you think about Doctor Who's telephone booth, right? It's about that size. That's the best way to describe it, I think.
That's good. Hopefully our Doctor Who viewers out there will appreciate that reference, and the rest of them can just go to their search engine.
And that's
It's about 14 feet high, about 5 feet across.
Escape ground network, good for box scan. Make that go.
Yeah, that was good confirmation of the process that we were very familiar with, talking about the attitude of the lander, making sure that those antennas are within direct line of sight with Earth stations, ground stations on Earth, excuse me.
Mission director at all stations are also updating
And they're still talking
with
about
our dishes to make sure that they're tuned in on our final landing site.
There's a call. We're searching for that.
Yeah, they're making sure that the antennas on the ground that are listening for a signal are properly aimed.
And it's important to note, Gary,
And
that we have
what I wonder, Bill, is, we certainly, there are satellites and some particularly low Earth orbit satellites around Earth that can tell you very specifically what's happening in real time on the Earth. Would there be any way to aim or look down on the moon from some other possible vantage point to get some visibility into what's happening here?
No, it doesn't work that way. There is no. There are satellites in orbit around the moon, but they're few and far between, and the ability to fly over a landing site and pick something as small as this up are really remote.
Yeah.
No, the whole key here is receiving telemetry from the spacecraft. There's an antenna in the United Kingdom right now that's aimed at the moon, that's trying to pick up this signal. They just haven't found it yet. I've covered other landings before where there was a delay between touchdown and the receipt of a signal. It's always a little bit nerve-wracking. Sometimes you get that signal, but sometimes you don't. And so it is a little bit of a nail-biter right now, no question about it.
Is there a term in the space journalism world for that interregnum between touchdown and notification of same?
With lack of communication.
You mean besides pucker time, I guess? I don't know. I mean,
yes, I believe that's an engineering term. Yeah, you gotta.
Of sorts.
You can imagine what it's. I mean, just staring into a screen full of numbers looking for some clue. It must be, after all this hard work. It must be very difficult to go through this waiting period.
Yeah, it is, John. And they were just saying the software is such that if they don't get communications within 15 minutes of landing, the computer on board the spacecraft is designed to power cycle the radios. Turn them off, turn them back on again. That's a standard repair technique in the world of space, just like when your computer crashes, power cycle it. So that may be coming up here shortly. We're right now at about 10 minutes from the presumed landing time, so that would happen in 5 minutes or so, something like that.
Yes. Control, Alt, Delete to reboot things.
Pretty much.
It's 5:34 p.m. Mission Director Tim Crane confirming that it could take 2 phases of 15-minute increments to confirm the status of the landing. So we could be here, and we'll stand by and monitor as Nova Controls continues to work this issue.
Yeah, tense moments inside.
So they're saying there could be about 30 minutes before they can work through all of these procedures to try to capture this signal.
So I wonder, does that mean basically two?
Patience is the guide word.
Yeah, 2 power cycles. Try something, and then if that doesn't work, you You reboot and try the next thing.
I think so, but I mean, there could be multiple components involved here that they would try to power cycle. I don't know if it's just one thing.
Right.
But clearly they're thinking it could take a little longer than even we were thinking. You know, up to 30 minutes or longer to get this signal if they're going to get it. Commentator is indicating that they are seeing some signs of a signal.
Oh.
We're still standing by. The last call from Mission Director Dr. Tim Crane was that we were getting a faint signal from Odysseus's high-gain antenna.
Huh? Well, that's positive news. Odysseus,
Absolutely.
Odysseus, the name of this intuitive machines.
That's correct, John. And, you know, if they're getting any signal at all, it means the spacecraft at least survived the landing.
Right.
Whether it's in the state they want, that's another story, the condition they want. But if they're getting a signal at all, it means something is intact on the surface and transmitting.
And Bill, would we imagine that there is some set of diagnostics that it's supposed to send back when it lands to send some kind of indication of what condition it's in? Or,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
This is Mission Director.
So it wouldn't just be it wouldn't just be a signal. It might in fact contain some
how we
information.
confirm that signal and dial in the pointing for Odysseus. What we can confirm, without a doubt, is our equipment is on the surface of the moon, and we are transmitting. So, congratulations, IM team. We'll see how much more we can get from that.
Well, that's a good moment right there.
Yeah. So tell them.
Excellent call from our Mission Director, Dr. Tim Crane.
And, John, to answer your question, they will get a volumes of telemetry once they get this link reestablished from every system on board the spacecraft. They'll be able to go back and recreate the descent second by second to see exactly what was going on, when, where, and how. And whatever's caused this communications outage, they will pin that down. Now, that's assuming that all the systems come back up as they hope.
Right, and there we see more cheering from that declaration that, so they said they know two things. They know that it's on the surface and that it is transmitting, and we just don't know the quality and the kind of transmission at the moment. But a win is a win, I think, is what all that cheering seems to suggest. But now it's essentially still looks like they're waiting.
Well, they seem pretty confident the vehicle is intact and in relatively good shape, just trying to get the communication stream reestablished. But you can see the cheering going on, and you know, space engineers are a conservative bunch, and you don't see outbursts like, unlike the movies, you don't see outbursts like that unless they really think they made it.
Right. And Bill, you were saying that once it's landed and had a minute to settle itself, that there will be data return, and that it sounded like that would include video and actual possibly pictures of this landing.
Absolutely. You know, the spacecraft was programmed to shoot video all the way down. You know, interestingly, you asked earlier about innovative things on board. Students at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University up in Daytona Beach built a payload that was supposed to be released from the lander when it was still about 100 feet up. And this thing is designed to actually take pictures of the landing from the side. Nothing like that's ever been attempted before. Yeah. So we should get those pictures back. There are cameras mounted on the lander itself that are going to be looking at how the exhaust plume from that engine disturbs the lunar soil. They want to know about that as they plan for the landers that are going to carry astronauts down. We're going to get that video down. You know, originally they were saying you'd start seeing pictures within a half hour of landing. Obviously, that might not happen as quickly as that, but we should get those pictures down in fairly short order.
And Bill, what's the while we're waiting here for signs of success, how complicated is it for a private company to just decide to put something on the moon? I mean, what's the red tape? Obviously, there's the engineering challenge and all of that, but just in terms of paperwork, if I want to send something to the moon, who do I check with, and how complicated is that?
Well, you know, it's really interesting. I don't think any of these companies, or any of these American companies anyway, would have been able to attempt this without NASA's help and encouragement. You know, they have a program designed to get commercial payloads and spacecraft to the moon as a way to help NASA pave the way to the Artemis program. So for this mission, NASA spent about $118 million paying Intuitive Machines to carry their payloads to the moon. So without that seed money from NASA, I'm not sure this would have happened, because at the end of the day, it takes a lot of money to put these flights together. You have to buy a rocket. You have to have tracking systems, the engineers, not to mention the hardware on the spacecraft itself. You've got to carry out incredible amounts of testing to make sure things are going to work right. And so it's not something for the faint of heart, that's for sure.
Right.
So I think mostly it's more financial. It's as much financial, I would say, than it is technical. The technology, people know how to do it. As you said earlier in this broadcast, you know, we've been sending things into space for a long, long time now. But having the wherewithal as a private company, which doesn't have NASA's, I won't say unlimited resources because they're not, but the government agency has a lot more money to spend on testing and things like that than a private company ever will have. So I think that may be the biggest challenge right there.
All right, Bill, we're going to sign off for the moment while we wait on final word here. Thank you so much for going through this with us and helping us understand it.